Let's bring in former senior CIA field operative Daryl Blocker, political reporter Brittany Shepard, State Department reporter Connor Finnegan, and ABC News journalist Fidel Pavlenko in Kyiv for more on this. Connor, I want to start with you. President Zelenskyy did not hold back in calling out the council today, saying, where is the security the UN Security Council needs to guarantee? It's not there. So what do you think of his words today and sort of calling out the council and asking for reforming the world security system? And what actions do you expect to see from the UN and your UN Security Council in response?
Yeah, Diane, this was really a searing indictment of the UN system itself. He went after the Security Council, which is supposed to be the UN's top body, its most powerful organization, and saying that it has not done enough to guarantee security throughout the world, not just in Ukraine. He referenced several examples over the last few decades. He called for Russia to either be expelled from the Security Council or for the UN to essentially close its doors. There is no effort underway right now to expel Russia from the Security Council. It is one of the 5 permanent members of the chamber, along with China, the UK, France, and the US. All of them wield veto power, and that has really rendered the council powerless throughout this entire war. If you recall, the night that Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine began, the Security Council was meeting and essentially did nothing but speak, did nothing but deliver remarks as these bombs are being dropped across Ukraine. There is an effort underway right now by the U.S. and several other of its allies, including Ukraine, to expel Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. That would require only a 2/3 majority in the UN General Assembly, something that U.S. officials tell me that they do believe that they have after previous resolutions passed the General Assembly to condemn Russia's invasion. But that is far short of what President Zelenskyy is calling for here. He's really calling for, a remake, a remodeling of the entire international security system to guarantee security for countries like Ukraine that have become victims of the most powerful countries like Russia.
And Brittany, Zelenskyy said that the world has yet to see what Russian troops have done in other occupied cities. Now, the U.S. has held back on calling this a genocide, which Zelenskyy does call it. Could that change if we see more images like this come out of other cities? And what would that mean for the U.S. response?
Well, Biden and senior officials know that all eyes are on them as these graphic images and these horrible stories come out, and will definitely come out, unfortunately, in the next few days and few weeks. But they know that calling and casting this in a genocide is essentially a declaration of war. And President Biden has promised his people that no U.S. boots on the ground will travel from here to Ukraine and to Russia. So it's a very delicate dance that senior administration officials have had to have in the past couple of days. I think it'll be curious to see what kind of language President Biden says later on in the White House. And I think it's key to highlight something that President Zelenskyy said earlier, and that what's happening in Ukraine is no different from terrorists like Daesh, otherwise known as ISIS. And here it's done by a member of the UN Security Council. I think people might forget that when President Obama was president with now President, but then Vice President Biden by his side, he had an all-out assault on ISIS, and trying to grapple with international terrorism was top of mind for the Obama administration, something that they received lots of criticism for. So I'll be curious to see how they've been sidebarring all of today. I'm sure those very difficult conversations have been happening, how this kind of bizarre mirror image now with President Biden now at the helm and President Obama's trusted advisor or friend as he returns to the White House for the first time since he left the White House all those years ago, might advise him as they both stand in front of reporters this afternoon in the Rose Garden.
And Daryl, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the atrocities committed in Bucha, that this wasn't a rogue action by some undisciplined soldiers, that this was deliberate. And Zelenskyy echoed that in his speech to the UN. I want to listen to that moment.
Russian troops are deliberately destroying Ukrainian cities to ashes with artillery and airstrike. They are deliberately blocking city, creating mass starvation. They deliberately shoot columns of civilians on the road trying to escape from the territory of hostilities. They even deliberately blow up shelters where civilians hide from airstrikes. They are deliberately creating conditions in the temporarily occupied territories so that as many civilians as possible are killed there.
Daryl, why do this? What would Russia have to gain by executing civilians?
To strike fear in the heart of those folks where they've not yet entered. This playbook isn't anything new. They did it in Chechnya and Donbass in 2014. They did it in Syria. They did it in Georgia. They did it in Chechnya. This should not be news to anyone.
And Fidel, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy says, in the midst of all this, peace talks may be off the table now. What would that mean for the future of this conflict?
President Zelenskyy, before addressing the United Nations today, he gave an extensive interview to Ukrainian journalists to explain to people of Ukraine what's going to happen next, because there were many, quite understandably, many calls just stop any negotiations with the Russians, because after what they've done, there's nothing to talk about. And what President, he's at pain himself, and he doesn't hide it. He says, okay, yes, it's very easy to withdraw from any negotiations, any talks, but how many lives will be lost if we just forget about any peace efforts and just continue to fight? So he painfully accepts that there is still a diplomatic way. And while there is a tiny chance, as he says, tiny chance to negotiate peace deal diplomatically, he will pursue doing it.
Brittany, how do you think these developments affect the thinking of the U.S. and allies when it comes to supporting Ukraine militarily? Zelenskyy over and over again has called for a no-fly zone. He's called for jets. He's called for tanks. Do you think this might help him get those?
Well, it's certainly what Zelenskyy and Ukrainians wish, right? That's why they're being so honest, so earnest. Of course, this is vulnerable and painful and full of trauma for the people of that region and for refugees, all across the country, especially, here even in D.C. and in New York. But U.S. allies and the U.S. itself know that it's a really difficult game to play. They say, look, we're going to give you as much as we can. The U.S. has already given President Zelenskyy some Soviet-era tanks. You're seeing France, Britain, and other members of the EU supply some military, some guns, and some money. But the U.S. wants to keep us as humanitarian as possible. They've issued, I believe it's $1 billion in humanitarian aid to the Ukraine, pressuring other allies and countries to follow suit. It's, militarizing President Zelenskyy is not on the top of priority list for Joe Biden's, and he knows that it's really difficult to navigate.
All right, Brittany Shepard, Connor Finnegan, Fidel Pavlenko, and Darrell Blocker, thank you all.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.